Look at the picture. Let's go.
Let's go.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, once again. Computer? Thank you. Okay, took a second. Why is my machine doing this now? Why is this happening? I don't even know how to describe how fucked up my computer is right now. Okay, we're not... Stop! Stop it, you fuck! What? Hold on, a key is pressed. That's what's happening. Oh my god, this is a jam. Hold on, there's always scuff. Okay, there we go. Does that fix it? Is it fixed now? Yes, okay. Well, welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be getting through the rest of Science: A New Golden Age. Or not the rest of it, as much of it as I can get through. Now, let me just turn this down for me. There we go. Is the audio balance okay? It's as good as it's going to get. It's as good as it's going to get. All right. Let's begin. Ooh. Before that, I did want to take a brief diversion into this article here. I just saw right before stream, and I wanted to call attention to it briefly. So this is from Gwern Branwen. That's his pseudonym. Come on, zoom in. Come on, come on. Why won't it zoom in? What's happening? Is it fucked? It's fucked again. Why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? What is it about my browser and OBS's virtual monitor that just doesn't play nice together? I don't understand. How do I fix this now? How do I fix this now? Thusly? Nope. Okay. I can do that. Can I make a new tab? No. Can I close this? Okay, I guess we're not reading that. Fuck it. Adapting to the changing nature of science. I'll try and get to it after stream. After the Golden Age of Science reading. Let me also pull up my interface so I can see what I'm doing here. On the actual stream controls. Separate that so YouTube and Twitch chat I can see both at the same time. Alright. The 19th and 20th centuries witnessed a series of institutional innovations that ushered in a fertile era of discovery. We might be covering covered territory here a little bit, but it shouldn't be too bad. Oh, that's where that is. I just found the host unit for my earbuds that I was looking for a second ago. The 19th and 20th centuries witnessed a series of institutional innovations that ushered in a fertile era of discovery. The natural philosophy of earlier ages, where a single scholar might range freely across what we now call physics, chemistry, and biology, had given way to specialized disciplines. Each had its own departments, journals, and staff. This transformation pioneered primarily in German universities during the 19th century, laid the foundation for scientific professionalization. Why am I not able to scroll? There we go. America adopted this architecture of discovery and gave it a distinctive twist. Land-grant universities democratized access to scientific education. The college major system restructured undergraduate training, and technical universities focused on industry. These innovations proved remarkably successful. The combination of disciplinary depth with clear career ladders enabled the specialization that carried us into the scientific lead. Yet, the disciplinary framework that served us in the 20th century sits uneasily with science in the 21st. The most consequential questions of our era, such as how proteins fold and function, how certain disorders emerge from neural circuits, and how we can harness fusion energy, do not respect departmental boundaries. The protein folding problem that earned the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry belonged to no single academic department. It required deep knowledge of biochemistry alongside advances in AI and engineering at scale. 2 of the 3 laureates came from a corporate research lab, where team-based science harnessed diverse experience. The 3rd laureate's work was seeded by NSF and later heavily supported by private philanthropy, spinning off into a large-scale university-affiliated center, rather. Both efforts depended on decades of infrastructure building in open science, such as the critical assessment of structure prediction competitions and the Protein Data Bank, built by over 60,000 experimentalists who shared their findings freely. The shape of an institution determines the shape of the science it produces. The university laboratory, centered on the principal investigator and a rotating cast of graduate students, excels at curiosity-driven research and at training the next generation within established disciplines. The industrial R&D lab, with its permanent staff and tight feedback loops, is suited to engineering projects. The National Laboratory and large-scale multinational scientific projects maintain unique capabilities too large for any single actor to sustain. Each form is a container that dictates what research becomes possible and what research never gets attempted. A growing share of scientific problems now demand containers that do not yet exist at scale in the federal portfolio, and does not yield immediate products that contribute to a company's bottom line. Mapping the wiring of the mammalian brain, for example, requires not a student on a 3-year cycle, but a sustained engineering team with the flexibility to scale quickly and hire from industry. It necessitates industrial-scale data collection. I gotta pace my voice. Necessitates industrial-scale data collection and analysis, which is infeasible under the fragmented structure of traditional academic grants. It produces a public good whose benefits a single biotechnology company cannot fully internalize. This pattern extends across other key problems. Achieving practical fusion energy depends on progress in plasma physics, material science, advanced manufacturing, and systems engineering, paired with the ability to scale up through venture funding. Understanding cognition well enough to address mental disease will benefit from new neural recording probes, machine learning suites that analyze neural activity patterns, and systems that deliver precise, closed-loop therapeutic interventions. Creating new institutional forms, then, plays a central role in bringing new scientific projects to life. The standard NIH R01 grant, which typically offers $250,000 a year for a pre-specified project, is the workhorse of American biomedical research. It excels at supporting hypothesis-driven science by small teams on tractable questions. But over-reliance on this structure creates systematic blind spots. Projects requiring tens of millions of dollars and a team of dozens fall outside the container of what any single investigator can assemble. Academic containers are further shaped by labor availability. Employing postdocs and graduate students remains effective for training the next generation of scientists, but doing so is poorly suited for executing large-scale mission-driven programs that require continuity, specialization, and long-term institutional memory. Frequent turnover fragments efforts and slows progress. As science funders have noted, no technology company would entrust its core R&D to a workforce composed primarily of temporary trainees. Yet this is the standard model in academic research. A more balanced approach would expand stable, well-compensated career paths for staff scientists, engineers, and technicians, roles critical to sustained institutional capability. Between the atomized work of the individual investigator and billion-dollar megaprojects like particle colliders lies a vast middle ground of mid-scale science. These are scientific problems requiring tens of millions of dollars, coordinated teams of 10 to 100 people, and timelines of half a decade. They range from the development of minimally invasive brain-computer interfaces that help people with Parkinson's to the building of new platforms that decode immune memory. That's interesting. I've always wondered when we're going to get networking of the human immune system. Like, one guy in California gets a disease, a novel disease, and instead of everyone else having to catch it, and then their innate immunity kicks in, it just, like, pushes an update to all our systems, and we're all immune to the new bug. I don't know if that could ever actually happen. I feel like with, like, mRNA vaccines, it might happen? I don't know. But we'll see. Such projects, which are often infrastructure-heavy, engineering-intensive, and cross-disciplinary, are challenging to perform in principal investigator-led academic labs. They are rarely pursued in industry either. Pharmaceutical companies face much stronger incentives to chase the next drug breakthrough than to build platform technologies for decoding basic biology. The ARPA model has proven so effective because it fills precisely this gap in mid-scale technology development. By offering grants in the tens of millions of dollars, these agencies can assemble new research teams and help startups tackle ambitious engineering challenges from robotic satellite serving to AI-equipped fighter jets. Funding at this scale, which has worked well in incubating new technological capabilities, could be extended to basic science as well, where the government is not merely procuring a weapon system, but pursuing scientific advancement for the national interest. Among private funders, a new class of focused research organizations, or FROs, has started to fill the gap. FROs are time-bound, non-profit research startups engineered to break specific scientific bottlenecks. They hire professional engineers and career scientists building institutional memory instead of just cycling graduate students through their training process. They produce public goods like open datasets, platforms, and tools, rather than the proprietary intellectual property that defines the commercial startup. And unlike the National Laboratory, which is built to last indefinitely, the FRO is built to dissolve, pursuing a well-defined technical milestone and winding down once the mission is complete. These organizations can set long time horizon milestones to target specific bottlenecks and provide full salary support, removing the grant-writing treadmill. The time-limited nature also gives scientists who complete the project a chance to return to academia or spin off a startup and raise venture capital. You can see there's a table here, curiosity-driven investigator-led research. Universities are good at it, corporate labs suck at it, federal labs, they're okay at it. Whereas long horizon platform and tool development, university labs suck at it, corporate labs kind of suck at it, federal labs are great at it. I do not like to move it. Get out of here. God damn it. I gotta eliminate that file. There. The FRO model acts as an open call for new kinds of science and for ideas our researchers have rarely dared to pursue thus far because there are no avenues for them. Academic incentives filter out team-based execution. Commercial incentives filter out public goods.
Greetings. This concept for a VTuber is interesting. How do you do that? Face tracking, head tracking. Also, do you use a custom model or a commercially available one?
I don't know, this is just my face, man. No, I'm playing. Yeah, this is all custom. I used a lot of AI, kind of just put it together. It runs on, let's see, at one point it ran on MediaPipe, and then we found that MediaPipe had too low of a frame rate on my machine. It was too resource hungry. Didn't give really the results we wanted, so I extracted the underlying models that MediaPipe uses, turn them into ONNX models. Let's see, how exactly does my inference stack work on this? I don't know. But yeah, it's a real CRT. And then I have a custom program that watches my face and then does this. Ooh, ooh. But yeah, we're welcome to the stream, D Hidden One. We're reading this report from the government about new advancements in how they're going to set up our scientific infrastructure. Hopefully we can avoid some of the issues we've been having with, I mean, he's going into it. But yeah, the pace of science has slowed because Mr. Castritos, I always mess up his name, he thinks that the structure of our institutions needs to change. And yeah, I agree with him. A lot of this stuff is stuff that kind of dissident scientists have been asking for decades. So it's very exciting that this is getting federal attention now. The FRO model acts as an open call for new kinds of science and for ideas our researchers have rarely dared to pursue thus far, because there are no avenues for them. Oh, we already read that. The FRO occupies the new ground of problems too large for the standard federal grant, too non-commercial for venture capital, and too risky and fast-moving for government facilities. But the FRO is just one point in a broader design space. As the examples of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory and the Institute for Advanced Study illustrate, many other approaches are possible. One proposal taxonomizes a range of novel institutional structures, including minimally constrained homes for basic science, FRO-style teams that execute against specific bottlenecks, and specific formats focused on the scouting and seed funding of non-consensus ideas. Others have written about the variables that together map out the design space, the timeline over which projects are expected to pay off.
Oh, you're a programmer? Cool. Working on my own thing, although I'm working on better hardware before I get back to streaming. So, cool. Also, good luck with the reading.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm been a software engineer for over a decade. Took the leap into working with AI when 2019, when GPT-2 first came out, and kind of never looked back. But yeah, streaming is demanding on your hardware. Yeah, thank you for stopping in. I'll let's see. Can I check out your stream? D hidden? Is it gonna let me? It's not gonna let me. I want to look. Manage suspicious user. Are you a suspicious user, D hidden? I want to look at the guy's channel, Twitch. Criminy. Thank you. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. Oh, it doesn't look like... Maybe that isn't your streaming channel, account, whatever. Check out YouTube, okay. How do I
My
do that?
stuff is all on YouTube. Check out YouTube.
Copy. YouTube. But yeah, tomorrow, same time, same place, we will be... There it is, D hidden one. I see. You're playing Assassin's Creed and stuff. Interesting. Yeah, I'll take a look. But yeah, tomorrow we're going to be doing some programming if you feel like stopping in for that as well. I'm not sure what we'll be doing yet. Maybe working on my... I'm working on a non-Euclidean top-down shooter. So, like, you can take 4 left turns and get to a different place and stuff like that. It's interesting. Others have written about the variables that together map out the design space, the timeline over which projects are expected to pay off, the revenue strategy, the intellectual property policy, the size of the team, and the use of clear market signals to drive problem selection, among others. Betting exclusively on the existing funding model is like building a military composed entirely of infantry. Thank you for the follow, D hidden, by the way. See, is it not going to read that?
Have a free follow. I like you.
I like you too, D hidden one. Betting exclusively on the existing funding model is like building... Funding model. Why is it so hard for me to say that word? Betting exclusively on the existing funding model is like building a military composed entirely of infantry. Effective for one kind of warfare, inadequate for others. Fortunately, there are ways to expand the scope of federal grant-making to support these innovations. NIH and NSF possess OTA that allows them to bypass traditional grant constraints. What's OTA? Our national laboratories can also create pathways to stand up flexible, federally federally supported scientific teams on time-bound missions. Recently, NSF's TIP Directorate launched the X Labs, the first federal program explicitly designed to fund independent research organizations outside of traditional academic institutions. X Labs will provide full-time teams of researchers, scientists, and engineers with operational autonomy and milestone-based funding as they pursue technical breakthroughs. These teams will not only produce traditional research outputs like publications and datasets, but also command the resources and financial runway to develop revolutionary platform technologies that unlock new fields of scientific inquiry. NSF's X Labs represents a proof of concept for what federal science funding can become. Consider the mammalian brain mapping example again, one of neuroscience's grand challenges. A federally supported initiative could draw from extensive public-private partnerships, leveraging matching grants from America's vibrant philanthropic sector, and bring the best researchers from academia together to develop moonshot infrastructure that scales connectome mapping, much as the Human Genome Project commoditized genetic sequencing. Connectome mapping, huh? A hypothetical X-Lab could help map the reward and motivation circuits across various small mammals, producing one-of-a-kind datasets. For medicine, these circuit diagrams would offer a way to map the circuitry implicated in depression, addiction, and autism. Wow, I have all three of those. For AI, they would provide a biological reference architecture for building more robust systems drawn from natural structures that keep impulses in check and align short-term behavior with long-term goals. Yeah, I also have problems with both of those. Reformed and new scientific institutions should be matched with a broader menu of improved selection mechanisms for determining who and what type of organization receives scientific funding. Just as some organizations are better suited to certain kinds of scientific Just as some organizations are better suited to certain kinds of scientific projects than others, so too are some selection processes better than others at identifying and motivating promising talent and programs. The economic field of mechanism design, recognized with the 2007 Nobel Prize, provides the theoretical foundation for understanding how rules shape behavior and outcomes. Mechanism design can be thought of as asking the inverse of traditional economics. Given a desired outcome, what incentives and institutions will produce it? The field has already transformed how we allocate spectrum licenses. That's spectrum for radio spectrum. Like, you know how your Wi-Fi router uses the same radio frequency as your microwave? We have to allocate spectrum. We have to allocate frequency bands to certain purposes so that we aren't all stomping on each other all the time. So I guess they've recently reformed how those spectrum licenses are doled out. The field has already transformed how we allocate spectrum licenses, match medical residents to hospitals, and price internet advertising. Science funding is an equally rich domain for applying the field's tools. At its core, our challenge is that scientific research involves private information that funders cannot directly observe. Peer review emerged as one solution to this information problem, but while peer review has a long and time-honored history of distinguishing good science from bad, it struggles to distinguish the exceptional from the merely good. Furthermore, reliability is low, and multiple reviewers rating the same NIH proposal frequently reach contradictory conclusions about the credibility of the science. These structural flaws only get worse as the number of proposals rises. When a funding agency can only support one proposal in 10, the noise begins to drown out the signal. All too often, consensus-driven panels fund the least divisive ideas rather than the most promising. While these problems are widely recognized, reform has been slow because the incentives are asymmetric. A failed experiment invites congressional scrutiny, while continuing the mediocre status quo draws little attention. The review panel thus serves as a convenient liability shield, allowing decisions to be attributed to the scientific community rather than any individual who might be held accountable. A mechanism designed to hedge risk ends up precluding the risk-taking that breakthrough science requires. But evidence from recent experiments suggests that modifications to funding mechanisms can yield substantial gains in both efficiency and scientific output. One approach is to improve how peer review functions. In Denmark, a private foundation has experimented with a golden ticket system that allows individual reviewers to champion unconventional proposals lacking consensus support. This model helps rescue high-risk breakthroughs that colleagues might reject, and it is supported by a double-blind process that removes career history, cutting against elitism, and leveling the playing field for younger or less prominent researchers. That sounds really cool. The approach also tends to attract higher-quality reviewers who are individually empowered to make bold scientific bets. NSF has begun piloting golden tickets under its TIP directorate, and opportunities exist for broader adoption across new federal extramural funding agencies. Another approach is to change what we fund, supporting people over projects. Using philanthropic money, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute has provided long-horizon support in roughly $10 million over 7 years with minimal reporting requirements, while tolerating early failure and betting on people rather than on project proposals. When researchers compared these grantees against similarly accomplished federally funded scientists, they found that the privately supported investigators who have been granted more academic freedom produced high-impact publications at nearly double the rate of their peers and were far more likely to explore genuinely novel lines of inquiry. Similar approaches have been tried in federal agencies but remain too small a share of the current portfolio. NIH's own Director's Pioneer Award, designed to emulate the HHMI program, shows comparable results, and NSF's Career Award, though smaller in grant size, has also produced countless breakthroughs. The same philosophy of betting on individuals can be used to support younger researchers as well. Since 1952, NSF GRFP has directly funded some of America's most promising incoming doctoral students. While more work remains to improve the selection mechanisms and further empower students to choose their universities and principal investigators, such an approach has shown significant promise. The fellowship provides 3 years of support with the full portability across institutions, freeing recipients to follow intellectual opportunity. The results speak for themselves. More than 40 GRFP alumni have gone on to become Nobel laureates. These long time horizon grants can be matched with fast grants that provide flexibility on shorter timescales. NSF has mechanisms for fast decision-making that bypass external review panels. Hold on, I gotta make sure YouTube chat is up front because I'm not confident in the chat reader actually looking at it. There we go. I rewrote the chat reader's ingest so that it doesn't go through the API, so it may not actually work. We should probably try it at the end of stream, but it may work better. We don't know. I mean, that's the spirit of science, right? We're taking big risks with our chat reader. These long time horizon grants can be matched with fast grants that provide flexibility on shorter timescales. NSF has mechanisms... Oh, we already read this. And we're reading it again. NSF has mechanisms for fast decision-making that bypass external review panels, but they remain underutilized and often behind schedule. Meanwhile, a privately funded American program has demonstrated that, without any significant sacrifice to scientific quality, funding decisions can be made effectively in 48 hours rather than 6 to 9 months. With applications that take 30 minutes rather than months to prepare. Scaling these just-in-time grants up within federal grant-making agencies could encourage more risk-taking on novel ideas, all while reducing administrative burdens. Pool mechanisms offer another powerful and underutilized alternative to traditional funding, aligning incentives around outcomes rather than inputs. Traditional grants pay for effort, such as researcher time, equipment, and supplies, regardless of whether the project succeeds. Pull mechanisms invert this logic by paying for results. The case for pull mechanisms is strongest when the goal is clear, but the path to it is not. The most famous example is the DARPA Grand Challenge for autonomous vehicles, which catalyzed an entire industry. DOE and ARPA-E have also used similar prize authorities to accelerate breakthroughs in energy storage and grid technology. A related mechanism is the Advanced Market Commitment, which guarantees a market for a scientific or technical capability before a product exists. Such approaches can generate massive investment leverage. A privately funded prize for suborbital spaceflight offered $10 million, but triggered hundreds of millions in combined research and development spending across competing teams. Similarly, the open structure of another prize competition attracted solvers from unconventional backgrounds to read the unopenable Herculaneum scrolls, a feat eventually accomplished not by seasoned archaeologists, but by by a trio of computer science and robotics students. One of them including Big Balls. You guys remember Big Balls? We should pull his story up at the end of stream, if I remember to. While these mechanisms are ill-suited for open-ended, curiosity-driven research, they can be powerful tools for incentivizing use-inspired research and supporting technology commercialization. I should read these ahead of time before I read them out, but I don't have time to. An optimal innovation portfolio requires both push mechanisms to explore unknown territory and pull mechanisms to close identified gaps. The list of examples go on. Some of these mechanisms already exist in our federal portfolio and should be used more. Others should be experimented with, and still others have yet to be invented. Each addresses different aspects of the same underlying challenge. Each represents a hypothesis about how to elicit honest signals, reward productive risk-taking, and allocate resources where they will generate the greatest return. One emerging idea, for instance, is to decentralize decisions. Doing so can leverage the wisdom of crowds to identify good science. Scouts, financially rewarded to find promising projects and individuals, could help identify scientific research for grant makers. At a larger scale, the re-granting model rests on the observation that the people best positioned to spot breakthrough opportunities often lack the authority to fund them, while those with the authority lack information to spot them. Re-granting bridges this gap, delegating funding allocation to researchers or experts who possess the specific judgment to identify promising work before consensus forms. Re-granting is just when, like, a scientist gets a grant from a program, and instead of him spending that money himself, he goes, well, this other guy is cool, so I'm going to give him some of my money. That's re-granting. You get it? It gets granted, gets re-granted. It's like re-gifting. Existing intermediaries already perform this function with philanthropic funding. Such a model could be extended by funding portfolio-based re-granting organizations through federal agencies, or by giving a broad range of scientists the ability to re-grant a small check to anyone other than those in their own academic institutions. More speculative mechanisms, such as quadratic funding, remain in early testing. What's quadratic funding? I should look that up. Let's look it up right now. Quadratic funding. Oh, he's about to explain. No, he's not. He's not about to explain. Okay, what the fuck is quadratic funding? If I move my browser window, is it gonna blow up again? Let's see. Quadratic funding. What is quadratic funding? What the fuck is quadratic funding? Okay, let's find out. It's blue. Oh. What is this, a website for ants? Oh, it's AI generated too. Many donations win. Okay, but what is it? But what is it though? Okay, let's say 3 projects participate in the funding round. Project A received $1,000 in total from 2 contributors, $500 each. Yes, that is how math works. Project B received $1,000 in total from 5 contributors. Project C received $1,000 in total from 20 contributors. Oh my god. My lungs. The final distribution of funds is calculated by using the quadratic funding formula, where the number of contributions matters more than the amount contributed. Project A receives $740.74, 74% on top of the contributed amount. Project B receives $1,851.85, 185% on top of the contributed amount. Project C receives $7,407 of matched funding, $740 on top of the contributed amount. The broader the support, the bigger the match. Okay, that makes sense. Let me move that back over so I can see YouTube chat again. boobadoo, boobadoo, and boobadoo. All right. This approach weights the breadth of support more heavily than depth. A proposal backed by many small contributions receives larger matching funds than one backed by a few large donors. Quadratic funding reveals community preferences rather than gatekeeper preferences, and has shown promise in open source software, though evidence of its application to science remains pending. Let me take a sip. Gotta lube up the old thrusy. There must ultimately be a menu of options from which those who exercise federal funding authority can choose. The current selection system concentrates decisions among too few people using mechanisms that cannot support the weight placed on them. We stand at the beginning of a renaissance in grant making, and the federal government should welcome this experimentation. Private capital allocators must deliver results or risk losing their investors. Philanthropies compete for donor confidence, but federal program officers receive little corrective feedback when their grant portfolios systemically underperform. And agencies rarely compare outcomes across funding mechanisms or allocation strategies. Just as investment funds in the private sector balance their portfolios and match mechanisms to the nature of the work, we need to move toward a far more intentional approach to grant making. The preceding pages cataloged a diverse arsenal of mechanisms: golden tickets, which move us beyond false consensus; individual-based funding, which bets on researchers rather than proposals; pull mechanisms, which pay for outcomes rather than inputs; and re-granting, which delegates decisions to those closest to the frontier. Each works for certain problems, operates well within certain institutional constraints, and produces returns with a particular risk profile. We can also be intentional about where we place various programs on the exploration-exploitation trade-off. Bold scientific bets can pay off in big ways. The biggest breakthroughs of the past decades have more often than not been driven by a relentless pursuit of tools and frameworks to answer practical questions. Science is not a pure random walk. It often helps to have an inductive bias. This is Pasteur's quadrant, the domain of use-inspired basic research, which we discussed in Chapter 1. But pure curiosity-driven research can also deliver immense value to society. Riemann's abstract study of differential geometry eventually enabled Einstein's formulation of general relativity. The field of group theory eventually enabled cryptographic codes, computer graphics, and our understanding of elementary particle physics. How did group theory contribute to computer graphics? That's interesting. I should look that up. The key lies in distinguishing between cases where strategic direction can accelerate progress and cases where the fog is too thick for anything but an exploratory search. Intentional grant making therefore requires deliberate portfolio construction, a mix of high risk and low risk bets, a balance of person-based, project-based, and institution-based funding, and explicit strategies for allocating across fields and capability areas. Federal agencies should construct their portfolios the way sophisticated allocators do, with thesis-driven conviction about where breakthroughs are most likely to emerge, while preserving space for the serendipity that no thesis can anticipate. We should aim to engineer a large, well-constructed portfolio that allows us to win in the long run. The foundation of this portfolio should be a meta-science unit in each federal science agency. Each unit should be highly empowered, reporting directly to the director or administrator to ensure cross-agency visibility and guard against capture by particular programs or constituencies. Each unit should be staffed with researchers possessing expertise in the science of science, program evaluation, and data analysis, supplemented by rotating program officers who bring operational knowledge of how grants actually get made. Federal funding agencies should develop systemic gap mapping capability, regularly review their funding portfolios, and drive more intentional grant making instead of deferring to the portfolio allocation of the previous fiscal year. Such a process could identify both bottlenecks and the foundational capabilities that would address them. Metascience units could, for instance, convene expert workshops and maintain living maps of capability gaps, or work externally with foundations that have developed sophisticated methods for identifying transformative research opportunities. DARPA's Hailmire Catechism embodies this discipline, forcing explicit articulation of what gap a program addresses and why solving it matters. These units should be empowered to do more than advise on existing portfolio of instruments. They should pilot new ones across agency programs. An NIH unit might randomize whether study sections use golden tickets, then track the novelty and citation impact of funded projects across conditions. An NSF unit might compare outcomes from fast grants against standard review timelines. A DOW unit might experiment with how much discretion program managers are given in funding decisions, comparing data across branches. Without the authority to run experiments and to compel program offices to participate, these units will devolve into compliance operations producing reports. One way to secure this authority is to give each metascience unit a budget it can re-grant to program managers for participating in experiments. Their findings should also be published externally, building the broader evidence based on what works in science funding and creating accountability to act on what is learned. The United Kingdom's Metascience Unit, established in 2024, offers an early model, reporting in its first year on distributed peer review, partial randomization of awards, and the consistency of reviewer judgments. All this institutional experimentation must be matched by hiring the highest quality staff. We can and must make program management one of the most sought-after jobs in science, where talented people can shape the direction of entire fields. DARPA's success rests on not any single mechanism, but on hiring the right program managers and giving them genuine discretion. This begins with making it easier for people from a wide range of backgrounds, including industry and philanthropy, to enter a short stint in government. With raising the prestige and profile of program officers whose efforts in coordinating entire fields towards major breakthroughs often go under-recognized. We need to recruit the best scientific talent into these roles and then truly empower them with resources, freedom, and the opportunity to network with the smartest people tackling the hardest problems. America invented the modern research architecture with institutional innovations that the rest of the world subsequently adopted. We must lead the charge again. All right, that's Chapter 3. Well, that was Chapter 2. This is Chapter 3. We got a lot of reading to do left, so it's been about 40 minutes. I'm going to take a 15-minute break, and can't talk. Brain fuck. See you in 15. I think. Is it going to start? There we go. right. Let's get back into it. Put up your dukes, let's get into it. Hit me with your best shot. In centuries past, land and population determined national power. The industrial age added capital and manufacturing capacity as fundamental components of national sovereignty and security. As the president's national security strategy makes clear, technological capability has always conferred advantages, and now sets the term on which all these inputs operate. Technological leadership helped forge modern America. Science alone did not produce this leadership. It required the deliberate cultivation of engineering talent, institutional capacity, and industrial might to turn discoveries into capabilities. Our physicists translated Schrödinger's equations into the weapons that ended World War II and defined the nuclear order that followed. Our engineers turned Shannon's information theory into the protocols that carry the world's digital communications. Our scientists turned advances in physics and materials science into GPS satellites that guide ships, planes, and precision weapons on every continent. Technology has become foundational to a nation's economic and military strength, its capacity to act independently in the world, and its ability to maintain its distinct culture and way of life. American technological leadership produced enormous wealth, secured our homeland, and turned our nation into a beacon for the rest of the world. It cannot be taken for granted. The nature of technological advantage is shifting. As will be discussed in Chapter 5, advances in AI expand the world's ability to generate ideas and will accelerate scientific research. These capabilities will benefit American scientists, but those benefits will also accrue to our competitors. As new tools of discovery become more widely available, the comparative advantage conferred by scientific excellence alone will likely narrow. It will, therefore, be equally important for our nation to bolster its capabilities in translation, the process of turning ideas into real-world capabilities. That is the subject of this chapter. America has long been the world's most prolific source of scientific breakthroughs. We must ensure we are equally formidable at turning those breakthroughs into national power, or else we risk watching the fruits of American discovery harvested first by others. For decades, American science and technology policy rested on an unspoken assumption that government need only fund basic research, support a vibrant economy, and trust that technological strength would follow. Pour money into universities, protect intellectual property, keep markets open, and the innovations that secure the nation and enrich its people arrive on schedule. This was the implicit bargain of the post-war scientific order, and for a generation, it appeared to work. That laissez-faire assumption does not survive contact with competitors who have built technological states. Commerce and research now constitute a geopolitical battle space, and the parallel to trade policy is instructive. For decades, the United States assumed that open markets would naturally produce American prosperity and that free trade would lift all boats by maximizing global efficiency. Instead, unilateral openness hollowed out the American industrial base. Competitors exploited our markets while protecting their own. The gains from trade accrued to a narrow slice of the economy, while entire communities lost their livelihoods. President Trump has delivered a necessary correction, recognizing that economic security is national security. The same logic applies to science and technology. The assumption that federal research investment alone would sustain American technological dominance and has proven naive. We funded the discoveries, trained the researchers, and published the papers, but did not ensure that the benefits accrued to our nation. The ideas, as well as the time and resource-intensive parts of the development cycle, are taken abroad to benefit others. American researchers invented the flat panel display. Asian manufacturers captured the market. American scientists pioneered cutting-edge battery chemistries. Production scaled overseas. The pattern is repeated across decades and industries. The cause was the same passive model that hollowed out our factories, while our competitors pursued a holistic strategy that deliberately blurred the line between public and private, civilian and military, treating every advance wherever it originated as raw material for their state-directed development. Our nation's technological outcomes are shaped by policy choices. The internet became an American platform because we embedded openness and competition into its foundations. We chose to go to the moon in 1969 because of our national will. It is an achievement that appears, in retrospect, jarringly out of place in humanity's technological timeline. Conversely, nuclear energy stalled in America not because the physics failed, but because regulatory choices over the past half-century made building uneconomical. In each case, the decisive variable was the set of institutional, regulatory, and strategic choices that determined whether science became capability. Competition may dictate that nations will adopt AI, race from genotype to phenotype, pursue nuclear technologies, and build advanced warships, but it does not dictate how they go about it or even necessarily win. Within broad technological trajectories, multiple futures are possible. The question is which one America will fight for. No nation, however powerful, can lead in every domain. Some technologies demand that we press forward, extending strengths and durable advantages where early leads compound over time. Others require that we hold ground. We may not seek total dominance, but we will not permit an adversary to achieve it either. In domains of lesser strategic consequence, we can concentrate our energies elsewhere and ensure that strengths accrue to partners rather than adversaries. The technologies that matter most are those that form platforms on which future technologies are built. Dominating the right foundational platforms grants structural power, allowing the leading actor to dictate the rules and standards by which others must play. These advantages compound, with advances in one field like computation unlocking breakthroughs in others like AI and biotechnology, creating feedback loops that reinforce the leader's edge. The semiconductor industry offers one striking example. It was not predetermined by nature that transistor density would increase exponentially over time as described by Moore's law. Rather, the market found ways to harness, fund, and develop the miracles of physics and material science that made such exponential growth possible. In turn, the countries that control the semiconductor supply chain now push a snowball that gets bigger every year, incorporating more and more of the modern economy. Mobile communications, satellite navigation, and ever more powerful AI systems are all built on this platform. Winning does not mean isolation. Yes, sovereignty over critical technologies often means building the capacity to produce them domestically, but as the semiconductor example illustrates, technological leadership can also mean strategic integration, supplying the platforms that drive economic growth across our partners' economies, like tapping into broader markets to push the snowball of Moore's law. Leadership means charting our own destiny by choosing which technologies we develop, which standards we set, and which supply chains we control, rather than accepting a world shaped by the choices of others. Accomplishing those goals requires that we understand and amplify our true advantages. Among our competitors, some, despite their industrial strength, lavishly fund state priorities while leaving private markets to languish, missing breakthrough technologies that emerge from the fringes. Their economies remain investment-driven rather than productivity-driven, with total factor productivity contributions declining even as R&D spending rises. And while the success of their consumer applications is often mistaken for genuine R&D-intensive innovation, they remain far behind the United States in driving original frontier research.
Race from genotype to phenotype. What did she mean by that?
I think he means determining which genes correlate or don't correlate, which genes cause which phenotypical expression. It's not a race thing. Meanwhile, America's financial... And welcome back to the stream, Missed One. Always good to see you here. Meanwhile, America's financial architecture channels capital toward frontier technology at a scale no nation can rival. In 2024, American venture capital firms deployed over $200 billion, accounting for 57% of global venture investment. Our public markets tell an even more striking story. As the time of writing, the 7 largest American technology companies are collectively worth more than the entire stock market of our primary competitor. These figures reflect not just deep pools of capital, but liquid markets that reward successful exits, a legal system that enforces contracts and protects property rights, institutional investors with long time horizons, and a startup ecosystem that treats failure as education rather than disgrace. This is our arena. The task before us is to match the incredible vibrancy of our markets with our scientific capital, to unleash technological capabilities that benefit the American people. Over the past few decades, America has built a regulatory state that brings down a gavel to block much innovation in the physical world. When it takes longer to obtain a permit than to build the thing being permitted, when the default answer from the government is no or wait, the most talented builders go elsewhere or stop trying. This system selects against the kind of people and organizations that drive innovation, namely small teams, unconventional entrants, and entrepreneurs whose opportunity costs are so high that they will not wait years for approval. The nuclear industry illustrates the problem at its most extreme. The United States once led the world in nuclear technologies. We built the reactors, trained the engineers, and wrote the safety standards that other nations adopted. Then we regulated the industry into paralysis. Before an advanced reactor startup can pour a single foundation, it must spend 5 to 6 years in pre-application discussions with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, followed by a design certification process that can take an additional 4 years. One company had to submit a 12,000-page application supported by more than 2 million pages of technical documentation. DOE spent over $600 million in funding to support this process for a single reactor design. Then came the combined license application with its own multi-year safety and environmental reviews, mandatory public hearings, and construction inspections. The first Trump administration began to fix this regulatory morass in the nuclear realm. The first Trump administration began to fix this regulatory morass in the nuclear realm, supporting bipartisan legislation to reform the NRC's approach. In the second administration, we have moved to break the logjam entirely because the stakes are so high, driven by energy demands across America's AI and manufacturing industries. In May 2025, the president signed 4 executive orders overhauling America's nuclear regulatory framework, imposing an 18-month deadline for the NRC to revise its regulations, capping licensing timelines for new construction applications, creating expedited approval pathways for reactors already tested by DOE or DOW, and directing the NRC to weigh the benefits of nuclear energy to economic and national security in its regulatory decisions. Companion orders direct DOE to facilitate 5 gigawatts of power uprates to existing reactors, begin construction on 10 new large reactors by 2030, and invoke Defense Production Act authority to secure domestic nuclear fuel supply chains. These are the most sweeping nuclear reforms in a generation, taking down the old system that placed the status quo above the American people. In biotechnology, the United States pioneered many of the foundational advances in genomics, gene therapy, and CRISPR-based medicine. Yet our clinical trial system has grown so costly that testing American discoveries increasingly happens abroad. A promising retinal prosthesis that restores vision for the blind, developed in Alameda, California, had to run its clinical trials in Europe due to the challenges navigating the approval process. Per-patient costs for clinical trials run far higher than in other economies. American scientists make the breakthroughs, but the infrastructure to validate and deploy them is migrating overseas. Here we have begun to reverse the trend. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has launched the largest deregulatory effort in the department's history. The Food and Drug Administration has moved to accept real-world evidence in regulatory reviews, dropped the default requirement of 2 clinical trials per drug application in favor of a single well-powered study with confirmatory evidence, and fast-tracked review timelines for drugs supporting U.S. national interests. NIH introduced a new site to make the community aware of priority scientific areas without the need for new notices of funding opportunities, and also eliminated application requirements that added burden without commensurate benefit. These reforms are essential, and they must mark the start of a sustained effort to ensure that the world's most innovative biomedical science is tested and deployed on American soil. These examples should only be the beginning. The best of American innovation has always been characterized by permissionless experimentation, the freedom to build, test, fail, and try again without asking leave at every step. A permissionless approach to innovation does not mean the reckless development of technology. Prudence and broad deployment is wise and is the foundation of society's trust in our technologies. But policymakers must also price in the harms of stagnation. The economic growth foregone, the lives lost waiting for the cure, the industrial and automotive accidents that happen by failing to adopt more advanced technology. Where existing rules do not fit new technologies, regulatory sandboxes that allow real-world testing under controlled conditions can generate the evidence needed to write sensible ones. Our goal should be to dismantle the procedural obstacles that prevent American knowledge from becoming American technology while maintaining genuine accountability for results. About 70 years ago, a committed group of amateur rocketeers purchased a private test site in the Mojave Desert north of Edwards Air Force Base. Since then, the oldest continuously operating amateur rocket group in the country has been firing homemade engines. In 2003, a spin-off organization incorporated next door as a non-profit, and its volunteers built the necessary infrastructure from scratch. They erected static test stands, reinforced concrete blockhouses, and propellant storage sites. They secured federal permits for handling high explosives and a Federal Aviation Administration waiver to launch rockets to 40,000 feet on weekends. A reservation there costs anywhere from a few $100s to the low thousands. On any given Saturday at this facility, a father and daughter team working out of their garage may be standing next to university engineering students and off-duty aerospace professionals, all firing liquid engines in the open desert. The adjacent airport itself became an FAA-licensed commercial spaceport in 2004. Multiple rocket companies have emerged from this cluster of cheap leases, federal licenses, and shared test infrastructure to win NASA prizes, raise substantial venture capital, and reshape the commercial launch industry. Mentors at the amateur site were recruited into startups. Startup veterans returned to mentor the next cohort of rocket enthusiasts. These organizations have overcome the odds in one of the most heavily regulated industries in America and have bred a vibrant ecosystem for innovation. Today, the federal government also offers test stands at industrial scale through the Stennis Space Center, where startups can lease facilities rather than spending tens of millions of dollars building their own. Providing test infrastructure and sustaining a regulatory environment that allows our innovators to experiment represents one of the most important levers we have for driving technology forward. Test infrastructure, whether for rockets, advanced manufacturing, autonomous systems, or any frontier technology, is an enabling resource that determines whether the next great American company starts in a desert lot or dies in the vine in a student's garage. Wherever AI systems are deployed at scale, wherever advanced reactors are built and operated, wherever synthetic biology is used in agriculture and medicine, the resulting standard supply chains and knowledge bases will compound in favor of the nation that moved first. America must be the place where that experimentation happens. While bright spots like the Mojave site and the Stennis Space Center exist for particular industries across much of America, the gauntlet between a scientific discovery and a deployed technology has grown so forbidding that many of our best ideas never make it through. Too often, ideas die after the paper is published. A breakthrough in a university laboratory must be prototyped, tested under real-world conditions, validated against safety and performance standards, manufactured at scale, and brought to market. The most talented builders increasingly migrate towards software, where the regulatory burden is lightest. This contributes to the lopsided economic growth we see today, away from the world of atoms in our heartlands and towards the world of bits in the valley. Beyond test beds, America possesses extraordinary research infrastructure built up over decades of federal investment. The DOE alone operates 28 user facilities, from the Advanced Photon Source at Argonne to the Spallation Neutron Source at Oak Ridge, providing capabilities available nowhere else on Earth. These facilities represent billions of dollars in capital investment by the American taxpayer and decades of accumulated expertise. Yet access to this extraordinary infrastructure has historically been too narrow and too slow. Echoing a theme from Chapter 2, evaluations for facility access are built for academic merit review. This system works for university scientists pursuing publications, but fails entrepreneurs who need to validate technology in a timeline set by competitors. Sorry, my face glitched out for a second there. I had to scratch myself. Opening these facilities more broadly to private industry with evaluations that weigh innovative I may have to kill this one early. I'm starting to lose it pretty quick. Opening these facilities more broadly to private industry with evaluations that weigh innovative potential. Wow. Opening these facilities more broadly to private industry with evaluations that weigh innovative potential and commercial urgency. Opening these facilities more broadly to private industry with evaluations that weigh an innovative potential and commercial urgency alongside scientific merit would multiply the return on existing federal investments. An older culture at the labs holds that industry engagement detracts from the research mission, but in reality these interactions benefit both sides, allowing external users to leverage the lab's vast knowledge base while exposing lab researchers to new, use-inspired problems. Revenue from user fees can also fund expanded capacity and new instrumentation, turning facilities that today operate below capacity into self-sustaining engines of innovation. Every facility hour that goes unused is a wasted national asset. Every dollar of industry revenue reinvested is a dollar of federal appropriation freed to grow the next generation of tools and equipment. Large federal facilities are only part of the picture. Closer to the entrepreneur, shared platforms at smaller scales have proven equally transformative. The National Quantum and Nanotechnology Infrastructure Program provides shared clean room access with more than 2,000 available tools, enabling startups to prototype semiconductor, photonics, and quantum devices without building their own fabrication lines, often at the cost of just a few $100s per hour. In the life sciences, shared wet laboratories have reduced the capital barriers for early-stage biotech companies, enabling researchers to move from concept to experiment in weeks rather than the years required to build a dedicated facility. Shared good manufacturing practice facilities address an even larger bottleneck. The production of clinical-grade materials under FDA-compliant conditions requires tens of millions of dollars in capital investment that most startups cannot raise before they have clinical data. This has created a catch-22 that can be broken by shared GMP platforms. Expanding these platforms across sectors and geographies would put the physical tools of innovation within reach of any American entrepreneur with a good idea. Our national laboratories and universities can play a similar role at larger scales, serving as revitalized hubs of testing and evaluation for private industry. Places like Oak Ridge, Sandia, and Lawrence Livermore possess unique capabilities to validate technologies no startup could test alone. Universities that host startup in their research infrastructure catalyze knowledge and hiring pipelines that multiply innovation. Yet licensing and partnership processes at national labs remain slow relative to the pace at which technologies must move. American research universities face a parallel challenge. Intellectual property policies vary wildly across institutions, creating friction for companies that want to license from multiple universities. Faculty incentive structures typically reward publications over commercialization, and far too often equipment purchased with federal grants sits idle between projects while entrepreneurs who could use it have no access. Reforms that streamline university technology licensing, standardize IP frameworks for federally funded research, and open university facilities to outside innovators on flexible terms would unlock a vast reservoir of capability that today remains bottled up behind administrative walls. Likewise, streamlining the CRADAs that govern lab industry partnerships and further leveraging the OTA and reducing the administrative burden on companies seeking to license lab technologies would help our scientific institutions move closer to industry speed. A major task ahead for the federal government is to harmonize the efforts of our publicly funded institutions with our dynamic private sector. The way government funds science has not fully integrated the spectacular rise of the private sector in both basic and applied R&D. In the 1960s, the federal government funded over 70% of all basic research performed in the United States. Today, the federal share of basic research funding has fallen to 40%, while industry's share has grown to well over 35%. Our biggest technology companies and leading pharmaceutical firms now support or directly publish some of the most cited work in fundamental science. Individual technology companies now spend more on R&D than the NSF's entire annual budget. In fields like AI, quantum computing, and advanced drug discovery, the most important research increasingly requires capabilities that universities alone cannot provide. In AI, the companies that train frontier models wield supercomputers worth tens of billions of dollars, hold petabytes of proprietary data, and can afford to spend tens of millions to recruit the best engineering talent in ways no university can match. This has produced an academic brain drain, yet academic researchers remain essential to the long-term health of the field, producing foundational work on next-generation algorithms that companies have less incentives to pursue. Without new partnership structures that give academic scientists access to frontier-scale resources, the basic research that underpins the next generation of AI advances will atrophy, and our technological leadership will rest on an increasingly narrow and institutional base. What is needed are mechanisms that adequately leverage the comparative advantage of both public and private funding. And I think I have to call it there for today, because my voice is worn out a little bit too much. I think I might be getting maybe a little sick. I'll tell you what, when I took that last break, the post-human components of the Johnny Thermiotic broadcast system experienced a pretty significant blood pressure spike. So that was deeply unpleasant. So I gotta look into that. But yeah, let's see here. I feel like if there's someone good to raid, we might just go for it. But otherwise, there was another video from that redhead lady that we might want to take a look at, although maybe I would rather save that for something like a Delta V stream. My brain. Yeah, it's probably time to call it here. Okay, I'm cooked.
Seems you're developing reading sickness.
Seems that way. Ugh. Let's see. What are we gonna do? I wonder... there's a Feral Outlaw video, actually. Not Feral Outlaw, Feral Historian. No, not Feral Hog Hunting. That's not what we want right now. Let's see. We've got his Camp of the Saints review. Let's take just 10 minutes to watch this one Feral Historian vid, and then we'll call it. He's talking about Star Trek. Straight up trekking it. And by it, I mean my star. No. Oh no, I didn't want to show off his channel. I mean, I do, maybe. I don't know, I haven't watched it yet. Okay.
Much ink and pixels have been spilled dissecting it as an alternate timeline. What's the point of Divergence? Is it World War II, the Roman Empire, maybe just that moment when Zefram Cochrane capped the Vulcans? But I don't think that's the way to look at it, because whenever someone finds themselves interacting with that mirror universe, everything is duplicated. Places, people, institutions, but in a warped way.
Everything's duplicated. Almost. Another Enterprise? Spock with a beard?
Another Captain Kirk, another Dr. McCoy, and
Exchange.
Most places and ships that are found in our universe, like the Cooper, exist here. The same goes for people.
It never diverges from the prime timeline. It runs underneath it like a shadow or a sewer. And it always mirrors the prime universe because it doesn't actually exist independently. Rather, it reflects the collective subconscious of the people interacting with it. Admittedly, this is my interpretation, nothing more. I'm not arguing that it's the canon explanation, but it is more consistent with the canon than any convoluted, perpetually parallel history. When we first see it in the original series, the Terran Empire is an extremely aggressive expansionist power. It conquers those outside, and within it is utterly treacherous. Advancement is by devious maneuvering, usually involving the death of one's immediate superior in order to take their place. It's not really workable as an advanced technological society, but it does reflect undercurrents in the Federation on a more macro level and on a personal level. The Federation at that time is also expansionist, pushing its boundaries ever outward. It does so through partnerships, alliances, fueled by a desire to explore. But it is having a string of successes, growing like it's inevitable, and at this point humanity is still quite young as an interstellar power. It's also new and exciting, and the mirror to that, the Terran Empire, tracks. It's more brutal, but it too is a young and vibrant civilization high on its own successes. It's a cruder, though more primal incarnation of the Federation. Perhaps more honest, embracing that we're awesome and can do anything on its crudest level. Yes, the Federation is made up of many different species and cultures, but we see it from a very human-centric perspective. Most of the characters are human or part human and part of that culture, and the mirror universe we see reflects that. When we next see the mirror universe in Deep Space Nine, things are very different. The Empire has fallen, humanity is enslaved, the days of conquest and glory are turned on their head into defeat and squalor. And that also mirrors the Federation at that time in some significant ways. At the start of Deep Space Nine, the Federation has long since transformed into a hegemonic power with a range of peacekeeping, power projection, and routine diplomacy to tend to. They still have that exploration mission, but they seem to be doing mostly Space Navy stuff. Superpower maintenance. That youthful vigor has turned into sensible middle age, and with it, worries and perhaps regrets have started to crop up. Enter the Dominion. Entire seasons of DS9 are spent slowly building up the threat of a massive Dominion invasion of the Quadrant. And how does the Federation meet it? Patriotically beating the war drums in anticipation of vanquishing another foe? A call to a grand moralistic crusade to free the subject peoples of the Gamma Quadrant? With cold, calculating strategy to surgically neutralize the threat? No, mostly they wait in dread for the Dominion attack. It's hardly a surprise, then, that the mirror shows that old militaristic audacity replaced with dreary defeat. Before jumping into the retcon machine with Enterprise and Discovery, there's something else that has to be noted. Starfleet and the early Federation are built on the reconstituted pieces of a shattered world, and that culture is still scarred by the memory of near annihilation. In this era of Star Trek, the chronology from Enterprise through Discovery into the original series, mankind is standing up and rebuilding, full of hope for a better future, but underneath that optimism is the echo of a cataclysmic war. There's been terrible violence and hate in collective memory. Naturally, then, our collective shadow manifests as an imperialist war machine built on treachery and violence. But by the time of DS9, life in the Federation has been absurdly comfortable for generations. You can ask a wall for cake and ice cream, and it just manifests. In terms of influence and military might, the Federation towers above most of the neighboring civilizations, and humanity sits at the very top of that tower. It's been too easy for too long. Easy enough for relatively small moral failings to become amplified by their comparison to an unattainable ideal rather than to the struggles that reach the point of reflection. Doubt creeps in. Guilt festers for all the noble deeds done by the Federation. Some begin to wonder if their place at the top of that hill is deserved. Could it be that we have so much more than others because we cheated them out of it somehow? And if so, how should we be punished? The fall of the Terran Empire and slavery for those who were once masters. But what about the non-humans in the Mirror Universe? We're back to that idea of collective shadow and a kind of subjective space. We always see it through predominantly human eyes. If a group of Klingons breached the Mirror Universe, I suspect it would present a manifestation of very different fears, latent desires, and forbidden impulses. And I think Discovery supports this. In the first season, while Burnham and her compatriots are in the Mirror Universe, they try to form an alliance with the non-human resistance movements. It's a human-centric Mirror Universe. Everyone else is everyone else, a medley of otherness. That group is led by a Klingon, a counterpart of Voq, who is acting very un-Klingon here.
Yet here you are speaking in a foreign language, placing your faith in the cultural customs of others.
I am here. I have survived, only on the shoulders of my comrades.
Because this is a human mirror, with human motives and assumptions mapped onto the aliens. And if it turns us into xenocidal monsters bent on conquest, so does it also make them more like what we aspire to be, but excluding us.
Klingon, whose pride of honor is eternally fused with his identity as a warrior, stands side by side with a Vulcan, who cannot possibly comprehend his need for aggressive emotional expression.
Which isn't to say that they aren't real people. It's Star Trek, throwing some technobabble about subspace distortion and the quantum field matrix, creating an observer-dependent pocket universe, deriving its form from the subconscious of the observer. Mirror Spock is a very real guy, capable of independent action, but he's a dark reflection of how the rest of the crew perceives Spock rather than Spock himself. Which suggests that every Trek culture or species carries their own mirror universe as a sort of inverted race memory, the essence of all those things that their culture finds abhorrent about themselves. The Klingon mirror universe is probably full of devious, lying cowards. And maybe they're all starting to blend as the different civilizations have more and more contact with each other. Some reflection of the cultural diffusion that's happening in and around the Federation. Each race's self-image increasingly becomes defined in part by how others see them. Just as the mirror universe sometimes has living counterparts of people who have died in the Prime, the idea of them can live on in those around them. Chief O'Brien is a curious anomaly here. He's a decent, hardworking guy in both universes. In the Prime universe, he's carrying around some rather dark stuff from his time fighting the Cardassians, but the people around him don't see too much of that. To them, he's the reliable, overworked guy that gets shit done. And so, that's how he shows up in their reflected world. I'm thinking of it more as a collective than an individual projection, but I do wonder if it had been O'Brien rather than Bashir in that first incursion, if a somewhat different Mirror O'Brien would have manifested. Looking to Kira as an indicator, the freedom fighter struggling against the brutal Cardassian occupation, now a brutal enforcer of tyranny working alongside the Cardassians. That flipped self, the wrong paths not taken, is something that's always with us, individually and as a civilization. The Mirror Universe is one of the many ways that Star Trek gives an insight into our own culture, our hopes, our fears, lessons learned, and some that never quite sink in. When used well, it can tell us something about the characters and even foreshadow things to come. For example, the Enterprise Mirror Universe episode not only shows us a raw side of Captain Archer's ambition, with him planning to seize the throne, but if that long-rumored post-Enterprise series with Archer as the president of the Federation ever happens, that old episode takes on a bit more weight. That drive to power was always there in him, just attenuated and moderated in the Federation. Contrasted with Discovery, which really fumbled it. Captain Lorca was one of the most interesting characters in that first season. Early on, he's set up with some internal conflicts, like he's struggling to reconcile the Federation ideals that he sincerely believes in with his lived experience of war and the brutal realities of interstellar politics. But instead, all of that was waved away because he's the evil copy from the Mirror Universe. But it's about us too. The Federation is a brighter reflection of America. It strides where we stumble, but both the Federation and the United States have grown out of war to expand far beyond their beginnings and welcome others to be part of their journey. And things have gotten easy. Easy enough that some wonder if we deserve it all as old dangers fade from thought and we begin to amplify every historical sin and moral failing as an indictment of the whole, spawning grossly exaggerated shame and self-hate. There are real questions to grapple with. Questions that Star Trek has always taken on. And in that sense, Kurtzman-era Trek fits its time, dodging the hard questions and missing the point. Unless, of course, there's the unintentional point. A culture that has lost its way, that doesn't believe in anything, that shuns its own greatness, will have a very lame and boring dark side. It's a bad sign if you find yourself in the Mirror Universe, but it's even worse if you can't tell whether or not you're in it.
All attempts to communicate with the locals have thus far failed.
I already showed this one, didn't I? Because I remember a joke I made halfway through. Oh well, whatever. It's filler. It's filler content. Fuck it. Alright. That's all I got for you tonight. For the folks on YouTube, you'll be raiding into...
Yes. Trek has always explored philosophical topics thoroughly and honestly.
I can't tell if that's sarcasm or not. I remember the gay episode of TNG. I remember watching Chuck Sonnenberg's SF Debris' view.
Well, obviously.
I mean, for a TV show, I think it did a pretty good job. Yeah, for a TV show.
I do not recall. I am sorry. Weren't they all gay?
In a way they were, Missed One. In a way they were. Alright, have fun with Miss Pippa. Have fun with Miss Bread. I will see you all next time. Goodbye.